The scent of whiskey, sweat, and leather hung in the air as Lucinda Nash stumbled through the doors of the Third General Store in Paso Robles, California, clutching her 6-month-old daughter Emma tightly against her chest. The spring of 1878 had been unforgiving, just like the faces of the shopkeepers who had already turned her away twice that morning. "Please, sir," Lucinda said, approaching the counter where a balding man with spectacles counted inventory. "I'm looking for honest work. I can keep books, handle correspondence, or clean. I'm not afraid of long hours." The shopkeeper glanced up, his eyes immediately falling to the bundle in her arms. Emma chose that moment to fuss, her tiny fist escaping from the swaddling cloth. "A baby." The man's expression hardened. "Mrs. Nash, is it? This is a place of business, not a nursery. How do you propose to work with an infant in tow?" Lucinda straightened her spine, though the weight of exhaustion threatened to bend her double. "Emma is well behaved and I can manage." "I'm sorry," he interrupted, not sounding sorry at all. "I need someone reliable, someone without distractions." He looked pointedly at Emma. "Good day to you." Fighting back tears of frustration, Lucinda stepped back into the dusty street of Paso Robles. The California sun beat down mercilessly, and her threadbare dress offered little protection. She had exactly $3.47 to her name, not enough for a week's board at the cheapest lodging house. Emma whimpered against her chest, sensing her mother's distress. "Hush now, little one," Lucinda whispered, kissing the top of her daughter's head. "We'll find something. Your mama won't give up." 3 months had passed since Thomas died in that mining accident, leaving her alone with a baby and debts she hadn't known existed. The mining company had paid her a pittance as compensation, barely enough to bury her husband and purchase 2 train tickets west, where she'd heard opportunities awaited. What a cruel joke that had turned out to be. Lucinda made her way toward the edge of town where she'd seen a small creek. She needed to refill her water flask and perhaps wash Emma's soiled cloth diapers. As she walked, a commotion near the livery stable caught her attention. A tall man with broad shoulders was arguing with the stable master. Even from a distance, Lucinda could tell he was no ordinary cowhand. His clothing, while dusty from the trail, was of good quality. A large black stallion stamped impatiently behind him. "I paid for quality feed, not this moldy garbage." The man's deep voice carried across the street. "My horses deserve better than what you're trying to pass off." "It's what I've got, Jeffries," the stable master replied sullenly. "Take it or leave it. Then I'll take my business elsewhere." The tall man turned abruptly, nearly colliding with Lucinda, who had unconsciously drifted closer. "Pardon me, madam," he said, tipping his hat. His eyes, a startling shade of blue, widened slightly at the sight of the baby. "No, I apologize," Lucinda replied, stepping aside. "I wasn't watching where I was going." He studied her for a moment, taking in her worn dress and the pallor of exhaustion on her face. "Are you all right, madam?" Pride made her want to lie, but desperation won out. "Not particularly, sir, but we'll manage." Something in her tone must have sparked his interest, because he fully turned toward her now. "Isaac Jeffries," he said, offering his hand. "I own the Double J Ranch about 10 miles south of here." "Lucinda Nash," she replied, shifting Emma to free her right hand. "And this is my daughter, Emma. Pleased to meet you both." His smile was genuine, causing small creases to form at the corners of his eyes. "You look like you could use a meal and a moment's rest, Mrs. Nash." Lucinda stiffened. She'd had her fill of men offering seeming kindness with unsavory expectations attached. "I'm looking for work, Mr. Jeffries, not charity." To her surprise, he laughed a warm, rich sound. "Good, because I'm in need of a bookkeeper, not a charity case." "A bookkeeper." Lucinda blinked, uncertain she'd heard correctly. My previous man left for the gold fields up north. I've been trying to manage the accounts myself, but numbers and I have never been on friendly terms." He glanced at Emma. "But I imagine having a baby around might be complicated." Hope flared in Lucinda's chest, quickly tempered by caution. "I was trained in bookkeeping by my father. I kept the accounts for my husband's store before we moved west. As for Emma, she's a good baby. She won't interfere with my work." Isaac Jeffries rubbed his jaw thoughtfully. "Tell you what, Mrs. Nash, let me buy you lunch at the hotel and we can discuss terms. If we can come to an arrangement, there's a wagon heading back to the ranch this afternoon." Lucinda hesitated, her stomach rumbling traitorously. "Mr. Jeffries, I should be clear I'm a widow, not a woman of loose morals. If your offer comes with expectations beyond my professional duties, Mrs. Nash," he interrupted, his expression serious. "I'm offering you a job because I need a bookkeeper, nothing more. I respect a woman willing to work hard for herself and her child." He gestured toward the hotel. "Now, shall we discuss this over a meal that isn't trail dust?" Hunger and hope overcame her hesitation. With Emma secure in her arms, Lucinda followed Isaac Jeffries toward the hotel, aware of the curious glances from townspeople. She'd been turned away from every establishment in town because of her baby, yet this stranger was offering her not just a meal, but potentially a future. The hotel dining room was mercifully cool after the heat of the day. Isaac led her to a corner table, pulling out a chair for her before taking his own seat. "2 beef stews," he told the waitress who approached. "Bread, butter, and coffee." He glanced at Lucinda. "Unless you'd prefer something else." "That sounds wonderful," Lucinda admitted, settling Emma on her lap. The baby was awake now, her blue eyes wide as she took in the new surroundings. "She's got a curious nature," Isaac observed as the waitress departed. "She does." Lucinda smiled down at her daughter. "Sometimes I think she understands everything happening around her. Smart, like her mother, I'd wager." Isaac leaned back in his chair. "Now about this position. I need someone who can keep the ranch books in order, handle correspondence, and manage payroll for about 15 hands." The previous bookkeeper had a small cabin behind the main house. It's nothing fancy, but it's private and weathertight. Lucinda could scarcely believe what she was hearing. "And you wouldn't mind Emma, Mrs. Nash. My ranch is home to 3 families already. Children are part of life." He paused as the waitress returned with their meal. "I'll be honest, some of the men might grumble at first about a woman taking on what they consider a man's job, but they'll come around when they see you know your business." Lucinda took a spoonful of the rich stew, nearly moaning at the taste of the first proper meal she'd had in days. "What are your terms, Mr. Jeffries?" $20 a month, plus the cabin and meals. You take your meals with me in the main house unless you prefer to cook for yourself. Sundays are yours, though the books don't recognize the Sabbath during roundup or branding. $20. Lucinda nearly choked. It was a generous offer, more than fair for a woman in her desperate circumstances. "Is that insufficient?" he asked, genuinely concerned. "No. No, it's more than fair," she assured him. "I accept your offer, Mr. Jeffries." "Good." He nodded, seemingly pleased. "And please call me Isaac. Mr. Jeffries was my father, and every time I hear it, I look over my shoulder expecting to see him." Despite herself, Lucinda smiled. "Then you must call me Lucinda." "Lucinda," he repeated, as if testing the name. "Welcome to the Double J." 3 hours later, Lucinda found herself in the back of a supply wagon heading south from Paso Robles. Emma slept peacefully in her arms, lulled by the rhythmic swaying of the wagon. Isaac rode alongside on his black stallion, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sharing bits of information about the ranch. The landscape was beautiful in its rugged way, rolling hills covered in golden grass, dotted with valley oaks and the occasional stand of pines. As they crested a hill, Isaac pointed ahead. There it is, the double J. Lucinda leaned forward, taking in the sprawling ranch that stretched before them. A large two-story house dominated the center of the property, surrounded by numerous outbuildings, corrals, and barns. In the distance, she could see cattle grazing on the hillsides. "It's impressive," she said honestly. Isaac's expression softened with pride. "My father started with nothing but 100 acres and a dream. Now we run over 5,000 head of cattle on 20,000 acres. "You've done well for yourself," Lucinda observed. "We have," he corrected. "This land provides for a lot of families, mine included, though it's just me now." Lucinda wanted to ask more but sensed a story there he might not wish to share. Instead, she held Emma closer as the wagon rolled into the yard. Several cowboys stopped their work to observe her arrival. Their expressions ranged from curiosity to mild disapproval. A woman, especially one with a baby, was clearly not what they expected in a new bookkeeper. Isaac dismounted in one fluid motion, handing his reins to a young, stable hand. "Miguel, see to midnight." He turned to the wagon driver. "Pete, help Mrs. Nash with her trunk." A heavy-set woman with gray-streaked black hair emerged from the main house, wiping her hands on her apron. "So this is our new bookkeeper," she called, her accent distinctly Mexican. "Mrs. Vargas, this is Mrs. Lucinda Nash and her daughter Emma." Isaac introduced them. "Lucinda, Mrs. Vargas is our housekeeper and the finest cook in San Luis Obispo County." The older woman approached, her eyes softening at the sight of the baby. "Ah, such a beautiful niña. How old is she?" 6 months, Lucinda answered, warming to the woman's genuine interest. "Too thin, both of you," Mrs. Vargas declared. "We will fix that, yes. Come, I will show you to your cabin." "Dinner is at 6 in the main house." Isaac nodded approvingly. "Get settled in. We'll talk business tomorrow after you've had a proper rest." Lucinda followed Mrs. Vargas toward a small cabin set about 50 yards behind the main house. It was a simple structure with a covered porch and 2 windows facing the ranch yard. "It has been empty since Mr. Parker left," Mrs. Vargas explained, opening the door. "I had the boys clean it yesterday when Mr. Jeffries sent word you might be coming." The interior was spare but clean, a main room with a small iron stove, a table with 2 chairs, and a rocking chair near the window. A doorway led to a bedroom just large enough for a single bed and a chest of drawers. Someone had placed a wooden crate lined with blankets beside the bed. "For the baby," Mrs. Vargas explained, seeing Lucinda's questioning glance. "Mr. Jeffries remembered there was a baby. He told the carpenter to make it yesterday." Touched by this thoughtfulness, Lucinda blinked back sudden tears. "That was very kind of him." "He is a good man, Mrs. Vargas said simply. "There is water in the pitcher and the outhouse is behind the cabin. If you need anything, you come to me, yes." After the housekeeper left, Lucinda sat on the edge of the bed, cradling Emma against her shoulder. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel something like hope. "We might be okay, little one," she whispered to her daughter. "We might just be okay." The next morning, Lucinda awoke to sunlight streaming through the cabin's east-facing window and the distant sounds of a working ranch already in full swing. Emma, remarkably, was still asleep in her makeshift crib. The child had slept better than she had in weeks, perhaps sensing her mother's relief at having found shelter. Lucinda washed quickly using the basin of water Mrs. Vargas had provided the night before. She dressed in her one good dress, a navy blue cotton that had seen better days but was at least clean and presentable. She twisted her chestnut hair into a practical bun and pinched her cheeks to bring some color to her face. By the time Emma woke, Lucinda was ready to face her first day at the Double J. She changed and fed her daughter, grateful for the small supply of milk Mrs. Vargas had sent over last evening. At precisely 8 o'clock, Lucinda crossed the yard to the main house, Emma secure on her hip. She climbed the steps of the wide porch and knocked on the front door. Mrs. Vargas opened it almost immediately. "Good morning. Come, come. Mr. Jeffries is in his office. He said to bring you there when you arrived." The interior of the ranch house was impressive without being ostentatious. Quality furniture, well-worn but clearly expensive, filled rooms with high ceilings and large windows. Family photographs and Western landscapes adorned the walls. Mrs. Vargas led her to a room at the back of the house. "Would you like me to take the little one while you talk business?" she offered. Lucinda hesitated. She hadn't been separated from Emma since her birth. "I raised 5 children of my own," the housekeeper assured her, "and I have 9 grandchildren. The Niña will be safe with me." After a moment's consideration, Lucinda carefully transferred Emma to Mrs. Vargas' capable arms. "Thank you, I won't be long. Take your time." The older woman smiled, already cooing to the baby in Spanish. Lucinda knocked on the office door. "Come in," Isaac's deep voice called. She entered to find him seated behind a large oak desk, papers scattered across its surface. He stood when she entered, a gesture of respect that surprised her. "Good morning, Lucinda. I trust you slept well. Better than I have in months," she admitted. "Thank you for the crib. That was very thoughtful." He waved away her thanks. "A simple necessity. Please sit." He indicated a chair opposite his desk. "Coffee, please." He poured her a cup from a pot on a side table, then resumed his seat. "I'm afraid you've inherited quite a mess," he said, gesturing to the papers before him. Parker was a decent bookkeeper, but his filing system was unique. Lucinda accepted the coffee gratefully. "May I?" she asked, indicating the ledgers. "Please. They're your responsibility now." She set down her cup and pulled the nearest ledger toward her, quickly scanning the entries. After examining several more books, she looked up to find Isaac watching her with interest. "Well," he asked. "Your previous bookkeeper wasn't terrible," she said diplomatically. "But he wasn't reconciling accounts properly, and your filing system is non-existent. I can fix this, but it will take time." Isaac leaned back in his chair. "How much time?" "To get everything properly organized and create a system that works. A week, maybe 2, she hesitated. "There's something else. You're losing money on your supply purchases." His eyebrows rose. "How can you tell that already?" "You're paying at least 10% above market for feed and equipment. Either your suppliers are overcharging you or someone's skimming." Isaac's expression darkened. "Damn, I suspected as much. Parker always handled the purchasing." "I'd need to review all your receipts for the past year to be certain," Lucinda said. "But from what I can see, someone's taking advantage." "Then that's your first priority," Isaac decided. "Figure out where the money's going. If someone's stealing from me, I want to know." Lucinda nodded, secretly pleased by his immediate trust in her assessment. "I'll need a workspace. This office is yours, and I wouldn't want to intrude." "Nonsense. This desk is plenty big for both our needs. I'm rarely here anyway, too much to do outside." He stood, moving to a smaller writing desk in the corner. "This can be yours. I'll have the boys bring in another bookshelf." Lucinda was momentarily speechless. She had expected to work in her cabin, not to be given a place in his private office. "That's very generous, but what about Emma?" "Bring her with you," he said simply. "Or if you prefer, Mrs. Vargas seems quite taken with her. The choice is yours." Before she could respond, a loud commotion erupted from the yard, shouting men and the sounds of horses arriving at a gallop. Isaac moved swiftly to the window. "Trouble," he said grimly. "Stay here." He strode from the room, leaving Lucinda alone with the disorganized books. Her curiosity got the better of her, and she moved to the window in time to see several dust-covered cowboys dismounting in the yard. One was supporting another who appeared to be injured. Isaac rushed down the porch steps. "What happened?" "Rustlers," one of the men called back. "They hit the north pasture, got away with at least 30 head. Jenkins took a bullet in the shoulder." "Get him to the bunkhouse," Isaac ordered. "Mrs. Vargas will tend to him. Hernandez, ride to town for the doctor." Lucinda watched as they carried the wounded man toward the bunkhouse. Isaac turned back toward the house, his expression grim. When he re-entered the office, there was a hardness to his features that hadn't been there before. "I'm sorry, but we'll have to continue this later. Cattle rustling is an ongoing problem. I need to gather the men and go after them before the trail goes cold." "Of course," Lucinda said. "Is there anything I can do?" He seemed about to dismiss her offer, then reconsidered. "Actually, yes. While I'm gone, go through the supply receipts for the past 6 months. Look for patterns: who signed for deliveries, who approved payments. If someone on my ranch is involved with these rustlers, I want to know. You think the theft and the rustling are connected? It's too coincidental otherwise." He opened a drawer and pulled out a revolver, checking that it was loaded before tucking it into his holster. "I should be back by nightfall. If not, don't worry. It just means we're camping on the trail." Lucinda nodded, a strange knot forming in her stomach at the thought of him pursuing dangerous men. "Please be careful." His expression softened slightly. "Always am." He hesitated, then added, "Emma will be safe here. I've left 4 men behind to guard the ranch." With that, he was gone, his boots echoing down the hallway. Lucinda returned to the desk, determined to prove her worth on her very first day. If someone was stealing from Isaac Jeffries, she would find them out. The day passed quickly as Lucinda immersed herself in the ranch's financial records. Mrs. Vargas brought Emma to her around midday, and the baby contentedly played on a blanket spread on the office floor while her mother worked. By late afternoon, Lucinda had made a disturbing discovery. For the past 8 months, supplies ordered and paid for didn't match what was actually delivered to the ranch. The discrepancies were cleverly disguised but unmistakable to her trained eye. More concerning, the supplier was Wilcox Mercantile, owned by Harold Wilcox, one of the same men who had refused to hire her in town. She was copying figures into a fresh ledger when Mrs. Vargas entered with a tray. "You work too hard," the housekeeper scolded gently. "It is nearly 7, and you have not eaten since breakfast." "Is it that late already?" Lucinda glanced out the window, surprised to see the sun setting. "Has Mr. Jeffries returned?" "No, not yet." Mrs. Vargas set down the tray containing a bowl of stew, bread, and coffee. "The men are worried. They should have been back by now." Lucinda tried to ignore the flutter of concern in her chest. "I'm sure they're fine. Mr. Jeffries said they might have to camp if the trail led them far." But Miguel saw dust from riders coming from the north. He thinks they will be here soon." The housekeeper bent to pick up Emma, who gurgled happily at the attention. "I will take the Nina while you eat. She has already had her bottle." "Thank you, Mrs. Vargas. You've been very kind." Once alone, Lucinda found herself unable to eat, her appetite diminished by worry. She moved to the window, straining to see any sign of returning riders in the fading light. Just as dusk gave way to darkness, she heard the thunder of approaching hooves. Lanterns were lit in the yard as ranch hands emerged from the bunkhouse. Lucinda hurried from the office to the front porch, joining Mrs. Vargas, who stood waiting, Emma in her arms. The riders materialized out of the darkness. 6 men leading 3 horses with bodies draped across their saddles. Lucinda's heart lurched until she recognized Isaac riding at the front, his face grim but very much alive. "We got him," he called to the waiting hands. 3 dead rustlers and most of our cattle recovered. "Anyone hurt?" someone shouted. "Mendez took a graze to the leg, but he'll live," Isaac replied, dismounting. His gaze found Lucinda on the porch, and he gave her a brief nod before turning to the men. "Get those bodies to the barn. We'll notify the sheriff tomorrow." The yard erupted in activity as men dealt with horses and the grim cargo they carried. Isaac climbed the steps to the porch, removing his hat. Up close, Lucinda could see a dark smear of what might be blood across his cheek. "Are you hurt?" she asked, unable to keep the concern from her voice. "Not mine," he assured her, wiping his face with a bandana. "Nasty business, but necessary. They've been hitting ranches all over the county." Mrs. Vargas stepped forward with Emma. "You must be hungry, Mr. Jeffries. I kept dinner warm." "Thank you, Elena. I'll eat after I've cleaned up." He looked at Lucinda. "Did you find anything in the books?" "Yes," she said. "Someone's been systematically cheating the ranch for months. I have the details in the office." His expression hardened. "Show me." Despite his obvious exhaustion, Isaac listened intently as Lucinda explained what she'd discovered. She showed him the discrepancies, the forged signatures, and the pattern that pointed to collusion between the former bookkeeper and Harold Wilcox. "Parker," Isaac growled. "I trusted him." "He's been with the ranch for 3 years. The money involved is substantial," Lucinda pointed out. "Over $2,000 in the past year alone. No wonder he could afford to chase gold rumors." Isaac ran a hand through his hair. "First thing tomorrow, I'm riding to town to confront Wilcox." "Perhaps we should involve the sheriff," Lucinda suggested. "This is theft, after all." "Sheriff Dawson is Wilcox's brother-in-law," Isaac said dryly. "But you're right. We need to handle this legally." He studied her face. "You've done exceptional work today, Lucinda." "I knew you were the right choice for this job." His praise warmed her in unexpected ways. "Thank you. I'm just doing what you hired me for." Most bookkeepers wouldn't have spotted the fraud so quickly. He stood, stretching his tall frame. "It's late. You should get some rest. Tomorrow will be busy." As Lucinda carried a sleeping Emma back to their cabin, she realized that for the first time since Thomas died, she felt useful again, not just useful, valued. The feeling followed her into sleep, where her dreams were strangely filled with the image of Isaac Jeffries' blue eyes. The next morning dawned with an unusual commotion in the ranch yard. Lucinda stepped onto her cabin porch, Emma on her hip, to find several ranch hands gathered around something or someone near the bunkhouse. She made her way across the yard, curious about the disturbance. As she approached, the men parted to reveal a disheveled man tied to a post, his face bruised and his clothing torn. Isaac stood before him, arms crossed and expression thunderous. "Mrs. Nash," Isaac acknowledged her without taking his eyes off the prisoner. "I'm afraid you've walked into an unpleasant situation." "What's happening?" she asked, instinctively holding Emma closer. "This is Thomas Parker, our former bookkeeper. He returned in the night to steal the ledgers, presumably to destroy the evidence of his theft." Isaac's voice was dangerously calm. "Fortunately, Miguel caught him breaking into the office." Parker, a thin man with receding brown hair, spat on the ground. "You can't prove anything, Jeffries." "Mrs. Nash has already proven it," Isaac replied. "Every penny you stole is documented." "The sheriff is on his way." Lucinda studied the man who had caused such damage to the ranch's finances. "How did you know I'd found the discrepancies?" Parker glared at her. "Wilcox saw you arrive yesterday. When he heard Jeffries had hired a female bookkeeper, he sent word." I figured you wouldn't know enough to spot our arrangement. You underestimated her, Isaac said, a hint of pride in his voice. A mistake many seem to make. One of the hands approached from the direction of the main road. Rider coming, boss. Looks like the sheriff. Take Parker to the barn, Isaac ordered. I don't want him upsetting the ladies. As the men dragged the former bookkeeper away, Isaac turned to Lucinda. I apologize that you and Emma had to witness this. It's not how I wanted your second day to begin. No need to apologize, she assured him. I'm glad he was caught. The sheriff, a heavy-set man with an impressive mustache, arrived minutes later. Isaac explained the situation while Lucinda returned to the cabin to settle Emma for her morning nap. When she emerged, the sheriff was leading Parker away on horseback, presumably to the jail in Paso Robles. Isaac stood talking with his foreman, a weather-beaten man named Hank. Mrs. Nash, Isaac called when he spotted her. Would you be willing to accompany me to town? The sheriff will need your testimony about the financial records, and we should confront Wilcox today before he has time to cover his tracks. Of course, she replied. Let me just ask Mrs. Vargas to watch Emma. Actually, Isaac said, somewhat hesitantly, I thought you might bring her along. The journey might be good for her. Surprised but pleased, Lucinda agreed. An hour later, they were traveling toward Paso Robles in Isaac's buggy, a much more comfortable conveyance than the supply wagon that had brought her to the ranch. Emma sat contentedly on Lucinda's lap, fascinated by the passing scenery. You've taken to motherhood well, Isaac observed as he handled the reins. Some women find it overwhelming. It can be, Lucinda admitted. Especially alone, but Emma is my world now. Everything I do is for her future. Her father, Isaac began carefully. If you don't mind my asking, how did he pass? Mining accident in Colorado, Lucinda replied, the familiar ache dulled but still present. Thomas was a shopkeeper, but he got gold fever. We sold everything to head west. When he died, I discovered he'd mortgaged our future on that dream. I'm sorry, Isaac said sincerely. Losing someone you love is never easy. Did you lose someone? The question slipped out before she could stop herself. I'm sorry, that's far too personal. No, it's all right. He was quiet for a moment, his eyes on the road. My wife, Rebecca, 5 years ago, childbirth fever took her and our son. The simple statement contained worlds of pain. I'm sorry, Isaac. I shouldn't have asked. You didn't know, he said gently, and it's been a long time. The ranch keeps me busy enough that I don't dwell on it much anymore. They rode in companionable silence for a while, the rhythm of the horses' hooves a soothing backdrop. Eventually, the conversation turned to more pleasant topics: the ranch's operations, Lucinda's plans for organizing the books, and even Emma's burgeoning personality. By the time they reached Paso Robles, Lucinda felt a curious warmth toward her employer that went beyond gratitude for the job he'd provided. There was a decency to Isaac Jeffries that she hadn't expected to find in the rugged cattle country of California. The confrontation with Harold Wilcox at his mercantile store was both dramatic and satisfying. With the sheriff present, Isaac presented the evidence of the scheme between Wilcox and Parker. The merchant's blustering denials quickly collapsed when Lucinda produced her meticulous documentation of the fraud. You'll need to make restitution, Sheriff Dawson told his brother-in-law, clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to ignore such blatant evidence, or face charges. This is outrageous, Wilcox sputtered, his face red with anger or embarrassment, perhaps both. You're taking the word of a, he glanced at Lucinda, apparently thinking better of whatever he'd been about to say. A highly competent bookkeeper, Isaac finished for him, who spotted in one day what you hoped would never be discovered. In the end, Wilcox agreed to repay the stolen funds and provide future supplies at a considerable discount. It was a victory, but one that left a bitter taste. "I don't understand," Lucinda said as they left the mercantile. "He essentially admitted to theft, yet he'll face no real consequences." "Welcome to frontier justice," Isaac replied grimly. "At least we've stopped the bleeding, and the word will spread no one will do business with Wilcox once this gets out." They completed the rest of their business in town, filing formal statements with the sheriff and arranging for a new supply agreement with a competing merchant. By mid-afternoon, they were heading back to the Double J, their mission accomplished. "You were impressive today," Isaac said as the buggy rolled through the golden countryside. "Not many people would have stood their ground against a man like Wilcox." "I've had practice standing my ground lately," Lucinda replied, gently rocking a drowsy Emma. "When you have a child depending on you, courage comes more easily. Still, you showed backbone. That's a quality I admire." He glanced at her, a hint of something warm in his eyes. "I'm glad you came to Paso Robles, Lucinda Nash, even though I brought trouble to your doorstep my very first day." She teased, surprising herself with the lightness in her tone. "Especially because of that," he replied with a smile. "You helped solve a problem that's been draining my ranch for months. I'd call that a fair trade." As they crested the hill overlooking the Double J, Lucinda felt something she hadn't experienced in a very long time, a sense of coming home. It was premature, she knew. She'd been at the ranch barely 2 days. Yet something about the sprawling buildings and the rugged landscape called to her in a way no place had since she'd left her childhood home in Pennsylvania. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "It is," Isaac agreed, his gaze following hers across the property. "My father used to say that land speaks to those who belong to it. I never understood what he meant until I took over the ranch." "And does it speak to you?" He nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Every day. It tells me what it needs, what it can give. Sometimes it warns me of trouble." He glanced at her with a slightly embarrassed smile. "That probably sounds foolish." "Not at all," Lucinda assured him. "I think I understand." As they drove into the yard, several hands approached to take the horses. Isaac helped Lucinda down from the buggy, his hand strong and warm around hers. The brief contact sent an unexpected shiver through her. "Thank you again for coming today," he said. "Your testimony was invaluable." "I was happy to help," she replied, suddenly aware of how close they were standing. Emma chose that moment to wake fully, fussing for attention. The interruption broke whatever moment had been building between them. "I should get her inside," Lucinda said, bouncing Emma gently. "Of course." Isaac stepped back. "Dinner at the main house at 6 if you'd like to join me. Mrs. Vargas is making her famous chicken." "We'd be delighted," Lucinda replied, surprised by how much she meant it. The weeks that followed established a comfortable routine at the Double J. Each morning, Lucinda would bring Emma to the main house, where Mrs. Vargas would watch her while Lucinda worked in Isaac's office. The ledgers were gradually brought to order, and Lucinda implemented a new system that made tracking the ranch's finances much more straightforward. Isaac was often out on the range with his men, but he made a point of checking in daily. Their conversations, initially focused on ranch business, gradually expanded to include more personal topics. Lucinda learned about his childhood as the son of a pioneering rancher, while she shared stories of her upbringing in a small Pennsylvania town. Most evenings, they would dine together in the main house, sometimes joined by the ranch foreman or other senior hands. Emma was always welcome, and Lucinda noticed how Isaac would gently rock the baby if she fussed, seemingly comfortable with the child in a way many unmarried men were not. As May turned to June, Lucinda found herself watching for Isaac whenever she heard horses in the yard. His smile when he greeted her each evening sent a warmth through her that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Yet she reminded herself sternly that she was his employee, not a potential sweetheart. Her priority had to be securing Emma's future, not indulging in romantic fantasies about her employer. The situation changed one warm evening in late June. Lucinda was sitting on her cabin porch, enjoying the cooler air after a hot day. Emma was asleep inside, and Lucinda was taking rare moments to herself, reading a novel Isaac had lent her from his surprisingly extensive library. The sound of approaching footsteps made her look up. Isaac was walking toward her cabin, his tall figure outlined against the sunset. He carried something in his arms. "Good evening," he called. "Am I disturbing you?" "Not at all," she replied, marking her place in the book. "Is everything all right?" "Fine," he assured her, climbing the porch steps. "I just wanted to bring you something." As he came closer, Lucinda saw that he was carrying a beautifully crafted wooden cradle. The design was simple but elegant, with a rocking base and carved details along the sides. "I noticed Emma's outgrowing that crate we fixed up," he explained, suddenly seeming almost shy. "I thought she might sleep better in a proper cradle." Lucinda stood, running her fingers over the smooth wood. "Isaac, it's beautiful. Did you make this?" He nodded. "My father taught me woodworking when I was a boy. It's been years since I've had reason to use those skills, but—" He shrugged. "I thought Emma deserved something better than a converted crate." Tears pricked Lucinda's eyes at the thoughtfulness of the gesture. "I don't know what to say. Thank you doesn't seem adequate." "Your smile is thanks enough," he replied softly. Their eyes met, and something shifted between them, an acknowledgement of feelings that had been building for weeks. Isaac set the cradle down carefully on the porch. "Lucinda," he began, his voice deeper than usual. "I know this might be inappropriate given that I'm technically your employer, but I've come to care for you, for both of you, a great deal." Her heart hammered in her chest. "Isaac, please," he interrupted gently. "Let me finish before I lose my nerve. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know that having you and Emma here has brought life back to this ranch and to me. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'll understand and we can continue as before." Lucinda took a deep breath. "It doesn't make me uncomfortable," she admitted. "In fact, quite the opposite. I've found myself thinking of you in ways that go beyond our working relationship. But Isaac, my priority has to be Emma. I can't afford to be distracted by feelings that might lead nowhere." "I understand." He moved a step closer. "What if I told you my feelings aren't likely to lead nowhere? What if they're leading to somewhere very specific?" "What do you mean?" she asked, hardly daring to hope she understood his implication. "I mean that I find myself imagining a future where you and Emma are a permanent part of the Double J. A future where we build something together, not just as business partners, but as a family." He reached for her hand, his touch warm and steady. "I know it's too soon. I'm not asking for an answer today. I just want you to know that my intentions are honorable and my feelings are sincere." Lucinda looked up at him, this man who had given her a chance when no one else would, who had seen her value when others saw only obstacles, who crafted a cradle for a child not his own. "Isaac," she said softly, "I think we might be heading in the same direction." His smile was like sunrise breaking over the hills. Slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned down. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle yet held the promise of deeper passion. Lucinda felt herself responding, her free hand coming to rest against his chest where she could feel his heart racing as quickly as her own. When they finally parted, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "I should go," he whispered, "before I forget myself entirely." "Yes," she agreed, though everything in her wanted him to stay. "We have time." He pressed one more brief kiss to her lips before stepping back. "May I court you properly, Lucinda Nash, with Emma's permission, of course," he added with a smile. "I think Emma would approve," Lucinda replied, returning his smile. "And so do I." He lifted the cradle. "Shall we put this inside for its new owner?" Together, they carried the beautiful piece of craftsmanship into the cabin and placed it beside Lucinda's bed. Emma still slept soundly in her makeshift crib, unaware of the life-changing conversation that had just taken place. Isaac insisted on transferring the sleeping baby to her new bed, his large hands incredibly gentle as he lifted the tiny form. Emma stirred but didn't wake, settling into the cradle with a contented sigh. "She approves," Lucinda whispered. "Smart girl," Isaac replied, his voice equally soft. "Like her mother." He left soon after, both of them aware of the propriety they needed to maintain, especially now that their feelings were acknowledged. Lucinda watched him walk back toward the main house, his stride purposeful in the gathering darkness. For the first time since Thomas died, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with love and security not just for Emma, but for herself as well. The Double J was becoming home in ways she had never anticipated when she stepped off that train in Paso Robles just a few short weeks ago. The courtship that followed was conducted with a proper respect for appearances, but underpinned by a deepening connection that neither could deny. Isaac would bring Lucinda wildflowers gathered during his rides across the ranch. She would set aside special treats from her baking for his return. They took Sunday afternoon rides in his buggy, Emma nestled between them, exploring the beautiful countryside around the Double J. In the evenings, after Emma was asleep, they would often sit on Lucinda's porch talking until the stars emerged. Sometimes they discussed ranch business, Isaac increasingly relying on Lucinda's sharp mind for decisions beyond bookkeeping. Other times they shared their pasts, their dreams, their fears. "I never thought I'd feel this way again," Isaac confessed one night in late July, his hand entwined with hers as they sat side by side on the porch swing he had installed for her. "After Rebecca died, I threw myself into the ranch. It was easier than facing the emptiness in the house." "I understand," Lucinda replied. "After Thomas, all I could think about was survival, making it through each day for Emma's sake. There wasn't room for anything else." "And now," he asked, his eyes searching hers in the lantern light. "Now I find myself thinking beyond mere survival," she admitted. "I think about happiness, about building a life here. With you." His smile was tender as he lifted their joined hands to kiss her knuckles. "I've been thinking about our conversation that first night about being business partners." "What about it?" she asked, curious about the shift in topic. "What would you think about making it official? Being my actual business partner in the ranch?" Lucinda blinked in surprise. "Isaac, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that you have a brilliant mind for business. You've already improved our operations significantly. I'd like to make you a formal partner in the Double J with a 10% ownership stake." 10%, she gasped. "Isaac, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't possibly—" "It's not generosity," he interrupted. "It's good business sense. You've earned it with your work these past months." And he added more softly, "I want Emma to have security, regardless of what happens between us." The implication that he was thinking of Emma's long-term future touched Lucinda deeply. "Isaac, I don't know what to say." "Say yes," he urged. "Let me draw up the papers." "It would mean a great deal to me, Lucinda." Looking into his earnest face, she couldn't find it in herself to refuse. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you for valuing me so highly." His kiss was answer enough, warm and tender, with an underlying passion that they both carefully kept in check, aware of the boundaries they had silently agreed upon. News of their courtship and business partnership spread quickly throughout the ranch and into Paso Robles. Most reactions were positive. The hands had come to respect Lucinda's capabilities, and they appreciated the happiness she brought to their boss. Mrs. Vargas was openly delighted, treating Lucinda increasingly like a daughter. Not everyone approved, however. Harold Wilcox, still smarting from the exposure of his fraudulent scheme, took to spreading rumors in town about the loose woman who had ensnared Isaac Jeffries. These whispers reached the ranch through deliverymen and travelers. "Ignore them," Isaac advised when Lucinda expressed her distress. "People will always talk. What matters is what we know to be true." His support strengthened her resolve, but the situation came to a head in early August when Lucinda accompanied Isaac to the annual Founders' Day celebration in Paso Robles. It was her first social event in town, and she was nervous about how she would be received. Emma, now nearly 9 months old and beginning to crawl, attracted admiring attention from many of the women, which helped ease Lucinda's anxiety. The trouble began during the afternoon dance when Wilcox's wife, a thin, bitter-looking woman, approached them as they stood watching the festivities. "Mr. Jeffries," she said, pointedly ignoring Lucinda, "how charitable of you to bring your employee to such a respectable gathering." Isaac's expression hardened. "Mrs. Wilcox, may I present Mrs. Lucinda Nash, my business partner." "Lucinda, Mrs. Wilcox." The woman's lips thinned further. "Business partner, is that what they are calling it these days?" Lucinda felt her cheeks burn, but before she could respond, Isaac spoke, his voice carrying enough to draw attention from nearby groups. "Mrs. Wilcox, I understand you might be embarrassed by your husband's dishonest dealings with my ranch. However, I would appreciate if you directed your bitterness elsewhere. Mrs. Nash is a respected member of the Double J in my community. She deserves your courtesy, if not your friendship." Mrs. Wilcox's face flushed an ugly red. "Well, I never exactly the problem," Isaac interrupted smoothly. "You never considered that honesty and hard work merit respect, regardless of a person's circumstances." He offered his arm to Lucinda. "I believe they're starting a waltz. Shall we, partner?" Head high despite her burning cheeks, Lucinda handed Emma to Mrs. Vargas, who had witnessed the exchange with narrowed eyes, and allowed Isaac to lead her onto the dance floor. "You didn't have to do that," she murmured as they began to move to the music. "Yes, I did," he replied firmly. "No one speaks about you that way in my presence. Not now, not ever." As they danced, Lucinda became aware of the eyes upon them, some disapproving, but many more approving or simply curious. By publicly claiming her as his partner and defending her honor, Isaac had made a statement that would resonate throughout the community. "People will talk even more now," she pointed out. "Let them," he said, his hand warm against the small of her back. "I'm proud to be seen with you, Lucinda. In fact," he hesitated, then continued in a lower voice, "I had planned to wait until we returned to the ranch, but perhaps now is the perfect time." "Time for what?" she asked, suddenly aware that the other dancers were creating space around them. Isaac slowed their steps, then stopped entirely. To her astonishment, he lowered himself to one knee before her, still holding her hand. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as music faltered. "Lucinda Nash," he said, his voice steady and clear despite the now silent gathering. "These past months have shown me what it means to truly live again. You and Emma have brought joy and purpose back into my life. You are already my business partner, but I find that's not enough." He reached into his pocket and produced a small velvet box. "I would be honored if you would consider becoming my life partner as well. Will you marry me?" The box opened to reveal a beautiful gold ring with a modest but perfect diamond. Lucinda's free hand flew to her mouth as tears sprang to her eyes. "Isaac," she whispered, aware of the crowd holding its collective breath. "Are you certain?" "More certain than I've ever been about anything," he replied, his blue eyes steady on hers. Lucinda thought of everything this man had come to mean to her, the security he provided, yes, but more importantly, the respect he showed her, the value he placed on her mind and spirit, and the love, unmistakable in his gaze, that had grown between them. "Yes," she said, her voice strengthening. "Yes, Isaac, I will marry you." The crowd erupted in applause and cheers as he rose to slip the ring onto her finger. Then, propriety be damned, he pulled her into a kiss that left no doubt about the depth of his feelings. Mrs. Vargas appeared at their side, a beaming Emma in her arms. "The Niña approves," she declared, tears of joy streaming down her weathered cheeks. Isaac reached for the baby, settling her comfortably in one arm while keeping his other around Lucinda. "Of course she does," he said, smiling down at the child. "She's as smart as her mother." The celebration that followed was all the sweeter for the public nature of their engagement. Townspeople who had previously looked askance at Lucinda now came forward with congratulations. Even Mrs. Wilcox retreated, knowing she had lost this particular battle of public opinion. The ride back to the Double J that evening was filled with a quiet joy. Emma slept peacefully in Lucinda's arms, exhausted from the excitement of the day. "Are you happy?" Isaac asked as the ranch came into view, golden in the setting sun. "Happier than I ever thought possible," Lucinda replied truthfully. "When I arrived in Paso Robles, all I wanted was work to feed my child. I never imagined finding a home or love. The moment I saw you standing in that street, holding Emma and refusing to accept defeat, something in me recognized something in you," Isaac said, his voice thoughtful. "I didn't know then what it meant. I just knew I had to help." "And now look at us," Lucinda marveled, glancing at the diamond catching the last rays of sunlight. "Business partners, soon to be life partners. Partners in all things," Isaac agreed. "That's what marriage should be, don't you think? Equal parts working together." Lucinda looked at this remarkable man who had seen her value when others saw only obstacles. "Yes," she said softly, "that's exactly what it should be." They were married 3 weeks later in a simple ceremony at the Double J. Mrs. Vargas transformed the ranch house with wildflowers and ribbon, while the hands cleaned up the yard and constructed a dance floor under the oak trees. The county judge performed the ceremony, and nearly everyone from the surrounding ranches attended, along with many townsfolk from Paso Robles. Lucinda wore a cream-colored silk dress ordered from San Francisco, Isaac's engagement gift. Emma, dressed in a tiny gown that matched her mother's, was held by Mrs. Vargas during the vows. "I, Isaac James Jeffries, take you, Lucinda Marie Nash, to be my lawfully wedded wife," Isaac declared, his voice strong and sure. "I promise to cherish you as my partner in life, to respect your wisdom and independence, and to love Emma as my own daughter. All that I am and all that I have, I share with you from this day forward." Tears blurred Lucinda's vision as she responded with similar vows, adding her promise to honor the legacy of the Double J that Isaac had entrusted her with. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss was both tender and possessive. Cheers erupted from the gathered guests, and Emma clapped her tiny hands as if understanding the significance of the moment. The celebration lasted well into the night, with music, dancing, and more food than even the hungry ranch hands could consume. As darkness fell, lanterns illuminated the yard, creating a magical atmosphere under the star-filled California sky. "Mrs. Jeffries," Isaac murmured as they swayed together during a quiet moment. "How does it feel?" "Wonderful," Lucinda replied honestly, "though I might keep Nash for business purposes. Nash has a certain bookkeeping authority to it, don't you think?" He laughed, the sound rich and warm. "Whatever you prefer, partner, as long as you're happy." "I am," she assured him, resting her head against his chest. "Happier than I ever thought possible." Later that night, after the guests had departed, and Emma was asleep in her cradle, moved to a nursery adjoining the master bedroom in the main house, Lucinda and Isaac discovered the deeper joys of their partnership. Their coming together was tender at first, then increasingly passionate as they explored each other with the freedom of husband and wife. "I love you," Isaac whispered against her skin, his hands gentle yet demanding. "I have for longer than I realized." "And I love you," Lucinda replied, her body arching to meet his, "for giving me a chance, for seeing me." Their union sealed the promises made before witnesses, binding them together in the most intimate way. When they finally drifted toward sleep, wrapped in each other's arms, Lucinda felt a profound sense of homecoming. The journey that had begun in desperation at a general store counter had led her to this moment of perfect belonging. The years that followed brought both challenges and joys to the Double J. The ranch prospered under their joint leadership, with Lucinda's financial acumen complementing Isaac's ranching knowledge. Within a year of their marriage, Emma was toddling around the ranch house, calling Isaac Papa with complete conviction. 2 years after their wedding, Lucinda gave birth to a son they named James Thomas, honoring both their fathers. The boy had Isaac's blue eyes and Lucinda's determined spirit. Emma, now 3, appointed herself his protector and teacher, a role she took very seriously. By the time their family grew again with the arrival of Sarah Elena in 1884, the Double J had become one of the most successful ranches in San Luis Obispo County. Lucinda's innovative approach to cattle breeding and marketing, combined with Isaac's traditional ranching skills, had created an operation that was the envy of their neighbors. More importantly, they had built a partnership founded on mutual respect and deep love. The woman whom nobody would hire because of her baby had become not just a respected businesswoman, but the beloved matriarch of a thriving family and ranch. On their 5th wedding anniversary, Isaac presented Lucinda with a framed document, the deed to the Double J, now listing them as equal owners. "From business partners to life partners," he said, kissing her softly. "The best decision I ever made was offering you that job." "And the best decision I ever made was accepting it," Lucinda replied, her eyes shining with happiness as she watched their children playing in the yard, Emma teaching her younger siblings how to rope a practice calf, her dark hair flying in the breeze. From the porch of the home they had built together, Lucinda and Isaac watched their legacy unfold across the golden hills of the Double J Ranch, a legacy born from one desperate woman's determination, one compassionate man's vision, and the partnership that had transformed both their lives. In the years that followed, Paso Robles would remember the story of the woman with a baby whom nobody would hire, and the cowboy who made her his business partner and then his wife. Their tale would be told as an example of what could happen when opportunity met determination, when respect blossomed into love, and when two people recognized in each other not just what they were, but what they could become together. For Lucinda and Isaac Jeffries, partners in all things, it was simply the story of finding home in each other's hearts, a story that continued to unfold with each passing day on the rolling hills of the Double J.